Dear elders, it is not uncommon to witness favoritism among children, where parents love one child more than the other. However, when confronted, many parents might immediately deny it, saying, "I love all my children equally," yet, in reality, the way parents behave or how they divide their assets can have a profound impact on sibling relationships. Let's take a moment to reflect on the following story. 1. Story 1. The son who was favored for providing care. My parents always believed they would depend on their son in their old age, so they consistently favored my brother and his children. My mother showered him, his wife, and their children with attention and care. Meanwhile, she treated my husband and children as mere guests. She rarely spent time with my kids, only visiting them occasionally. I often asked my mother not to distinguish between her grandchildren and to treat her sons-in-law and daughters equally. She would dismiss me, saying that I was still young and naive, lacking the experience to understand. Fortunately, my husband was a kind and understanding man. Despite my mother's cold behavior towards him, he remained loving and respectful. A year ago, my mother decided to divide her assets. My father had passed away long ago, but with her hard work and successful business ventures, she had accumulated substantial wealth, a large house, several valuable plots of land in the countryside, and 2 significant savings accounts. The value of the land had risen, and my mother's property was quite valuable. My husband and I worked hard and never expected to rely on her wealth. However, with such a sizable estate, I believed she might at least give my family a piece of land or one of the savings accounts. To my surprise, she gave everything to my brother. She told me she only trusted her son and daughter-in-law, not her daughters. She explained that, as the eldest son, my brother would be responsible for taking care of her in her old age and handling the family's ancestral traditions. Yet, within a year, my brother had sold off all the land and used the money to open a restaurant. Unfortunately, without a proper business strategy, he quickly lost everything and even accumulated debt. Recently, my mother called us asking for help to take her to a medical appointment. My husband, ever the compassionate man, took her to the doctor and covered all her medical expenses. On the way home, my mother admitted her mistake and asked if she could stay with us. I looked at my husband with a heavy heart, but he nodded, showing no objection. Now we are caring for her in our home, but the memories of the past still sting, and I can't help but feel a deep sense of injustice, especially for my husband and children. Reflection. As we age, it's important to remember that how we treat our children and how we distribute our legacy can either strengthen or fracture the family bonds we've worked so hard to build. Love and trust should be equally shared among all family members, as unfairness can lead to lasting resentment. Wealth can be lost, but the love and care we offer to those around us will remain, shaping the legacy we leave behind. 2. Story 2. My father left everything to my sister. I was born into a poor family with just 2 children, my sister and me. Our childhood was a struggle, marked by hardship, especially as my father was chronically ill. After I graduated from university, I made the difficult decision to abandon a promising career in the city and return home to care for my parents. I found a stable job locally, but soon had to quit to pursue business opportunities in hopes of earning enough to pay for my father's medical treatments. With just $200 in my pocket, no transportation, no home of my own, I set out into the world. Despite the overwhelming challenges, I was fortunate enough to find some success, but every penny I earned went toward my father's medical expenses. Then I got married to a woman my family did not approve of. I had to organize my own wedding without the presence or support of my parents and sister. After starting my own family, I continued tirelessly caring for my father, taking him to countless hospitals, large and small, for years, hoping for a cure. But eventually, his condition became untreatable. By 2015, my business collapsed, leaving me with nearly $100,000 in debt, yet I still did everything in my power to care for my parents. What broke my heart wasn't the debt, nor the failure of my business, but the realization that no matter how much I did for them, my parents only loved my sister. Perhaps because I'm not one for sweet words, my actions often went unnoticed. My son, their only grandson, was belittled and dismissed by my father, who would call him names, accuse him of stealing, and yell at him so much that my son grew afraid of his grandfather. Meanwhile, my father adored my sister's children, calling them the smartest, the most well-behaved, and the most gifted. No matter how much financial support I gave, even hundreds of millions a year, it was never worth as much to my parents as the simple gifts my sister sent: a bottle of fish sauce, a package of MSG. They would proudly show off what my sister and her husband gave them to the whole neighborhood, yet never once acknowledged the sacrifices my family made. My mother always had an excuse not to visit her grandson. She was tired or too busy taking care of my father, but she had no problem traveling 200 kilometers to bring eggs and meat to my sister. Last year, my father passed away unexpectedly. I was left to handle nearly all the funeral arrangements on my own. A few months later, my mother revealed my father's will. The most painful part wasn't the inheritance or lack thereof. My father left everything to my sister. All the land, all the property. I wasn't given anything. It wasn't the lack of inheritance that broke me. I never expected anything from them. I had been financially independent since I started working and had never once asked my parents for a dime. My efforts had always been to give them a comfortable life in their old age, and I never needed to inherit anything from them because the wealth I built was my own accomplishment. But what hurt was the unmistakable truth. My father didn't consider me. I, his only son, the one who would tend to the family legacy, the one who was there every time he needed help, meant nothing to him. My sister, already wealthy, received it all. I never drank, gambled, or had any bad habits. My wife and I had worked tirelessly to pay off nearly $100,000 of debt, yet we still didn't own a home, while my sister lived in comfort, and the will written 4 years before my father's death reflected none of this. Even in times of need, it was always me he called. When he was sick or needed something, it was me. But when I asked to use their property title to help my struggling business, they refused. Why was I treated this way? At Cornell University, a study of 671 children and 274 mothers aged 60 to 70 revealed that 70% of them have a child they feel closest to, and around 15% of children report feeling unfairly treated by their mothers. While there may not be equivalent research in our country, stories like mine about unfair treatment by parents are common on social media. The truth is, humans are often driven by emotion, especially as they age, and sometimes they simply get along better with one child than another. Parents might feel compelled to compensate a child who seems less fortunate, or perhaps they gravitate toward the most successful child. Unfair treatment can also stem from outdated beliefs. The eldest son is traditionally expected to carry the family's responsibilities, so parents often leave their assets to him. Meanwhile, daughters are sometimes considered outsiders. When parents are unfair in their treatment or inheritance, the effects on sibling relationships can be profound. Minor inequities may not disrupt family dynamics, but when favoritism becomes obvious, it breeds resentment. Siblings who once loved each other can become divided, quarreling over who should care for the parents or who deserves a larger share of the inheritance. And when those wounds run deep, they leave scars that never fully heal. Ultimately, it isn't about the material inheritance. Every child, regardless of their circumstances, deserves to feel loved, respected, and treated fairly by their parents. This is what holds the fabric of a family together, ensuring that even after the parents are gone, the bonds between siblings remain strong and unbreakable. Part 2. When you retire, never give such things to your children, especially after 70 years old. In an era where familial bonds are often tested by the pressures of modern life, the story of Mr. Bernie challenges our understanding of parental love and expectations. Imagine devoting your entire life to raising and supporting your children, only to find yourself feeling forgotten and unappreciated in your golden years. Mr. Bernie and his wife, once devoted parents who spared no effort or expense to give their sons the best possible start, now find themselves at a crossroads. Their tale is a poignant reminder that while parental love knows no bounds, it must sometimes confront the harsh realities of changing family dynamics. Dive into this compelling narrative to discover why Mr. Bernie chooses to safeguard his retirement savings, prioritizing independence over unconditional support, and what it means for retirees navigating similar emotional and financial dilemmas. However, there are exceptions. Mr. Bernie from our neighborhood is not like this. He and his wife were once civil servants, earning good salaries and saving a lot of money. Now, both are retired, and their combined retirement pensions add up to over $5,000. Despite this, they haven't given their children a single penny since retirement, which puzzles people. While other parents are eager to give their children money, they firmly refuse. What could they be thinking? Let's hear Mr. Bernie's story and understand the reasons behind this. Mr. Bernie says, "I'm 72 years old this year, retired for 12 years. My wife is 5 years younger than me and has also been retired for over a decade. We both worked in state-owned enterprises, so our combined monthly pensions exceed $5,000. With such retirement funds, we live comfortably, enjoying whatever we want and traveling as we please. We don't hold back on ourselves. After working hard for half our lives, retirement is a time to enjoy life. Despite our comfortable situation, we've never spent a penny on our children. Some might ask, with such high pensions, wouldn't we have some money left each month to support our children? After all, young people have it tough, and parents should help them. However, my wife and I prefer to keep the money for ourselves, even if it depreciates, rather than spend it on our children." He continues, "Our actions aren't heartless. We've observed our two sons' behavior, which has left us cold. My wife and I struggled in life and know how painful poverty is. When our lives improved after entering public service, we were very caring and loving towards our two sons. However, we had boundaries. We spared no expense for what they needed, but firmly refused to spend on what they didn't need. Perhaps due to my educational philosophy of being tactful and moderate, both sons have always performed well since childhood. They excelled academically and were admitted to prestigious universities. They graduated, found employment in major cities, got married, and had children. Everything was smooth and stable. Many people admired us, saying we raised them well. Our sons became white-collar workers in big cities, achieving success in their careers." Mr. Burney adds, "Although both sons were outstanding, my wife and I did a lot to help them build their families and careers. After our eldest son graduated from college, we arranged for him to work in a state-owned company recommended by someone we knew. When he got married, we paid the down payment for his new house, about $100,000 US. Later, when he bought a car, we sponsored $5,000. As for our younger son, his major in college was relatively unpopular, making it difficult for him to find a job after graduation, so we spent money to send him for further studies. He didn't secure a stable job until nearly 30. When he got married, he married a woman from another province, and we spent over $5,000 US on his dowry. Moreover, we bought a house for both brothers, spending all the savings we had accumulated over half a lifetime." Mr. Burney shares later, "They both had children, so my wife and I retired early to take care of them. My wife retired at 50 to care for our eldest grandson, and I retired at 60 to care for our youngest granddaughter. It wasn't until the two children started school that we could rest. We can be said to have given everything for our two sons, giving our all. We thought that with our selfless dedication, they would eventually take care of us, but in the end, there was no filial piety, only a desire to live off us. Generally, where there are old people, there's a home, and children should come home often to visit, but our sons are different. They rarely come home during festivals and seldom call. Our eldest son lives just 300 km away, only a 4-hour drive, yet he only comes home once a year, usually during the Chinese New Year. Each time he arrives empty-handed and leaves with gifts. I remember one year, Mr. Burney recalls, while neighbors' children brought bags of goods and gifts for their parents, our eldest son was extremely stingy. He drove his sub home but only brought 2 pieces of clothing for my wife and me, without any New Year gifts. While other children give red envelopes to their parents on New Year's Eve, our eldest son never did. Only the grandchildren were thoughtful enough to give us their red envelopes. Before the New Year was over, our eldest son would leave, clearing out the New Year goods we prepared for the family. That year, I felt that our son and daughter-in-law were too much, so I said a few words to them. My son replied, "Anyway, you're both so old now, you can't eat so much, and it's a waste to leave things at home." Mr. Burney continues, "Our younger son was even more excessive. When we bought a house for him, he asked for money to buy a car. When he asked for money, his tone was like that of a bandit, directly saying, 'Dad, I want to buy a car, quickly transfer $7,000 US to me. Do it now.' I felt very uncomfortable with this demanding attitude from my son. It made me feel like he thought he was the father and I was the son, so I refused. Although we could afford to give him $7,000 US, I didn't like my son asking for money like that, especially when he already had a car. Buying another one would be a waste." Mr. Burney explains, later, when he couldn't get money for the car, he found other ways to ask for money, saying he needed it to renovate the house or start a business, asking for tens of thousands each time. But I saw through his intentions and only gave him a little money each time. Unexpectedly, because I refused to give him money, my son began to treat us poorly, as if we had wronged him. Every time he came back, he was cold and indifferent, leaving as soon as he finished eating, even when we asked him to stay longer. He heartlessly refused, saying it was uncomfortable staying at home. Gradually, Mr. Burney notes, the actions of our two sons made us increasingly cold-hearted. 4 years ago, my wife was hospitalized due to osteoarthritis. Although the medical expenses for surgery and treatment were covered by us, my wife wished for our sons to visit her. However, both sons avoided visiting like they were avoiding a plague. None of them came back, as if visiting their mother would cost them money. In the end, both sons only made a simple phone call and showed no real concern. What was originally a simple operation caused my wife a lot of pain, not physical pain, but emotional pain. While in the hospital, other patients were accompanied by their children, but we only had each other, which was quite pitiful. Mr. Burney continues, later, when my wife was still recovering, I accidentally fell and fractured my foot. At that time, my wife's back was not good, and she couldn't take care of me. I wanted our 2 sons to come and take care of us, but they kept making excuses. One said he was busy with work, and the other claimed he wasn't feeling well. Despite explaining the seriousness of my condition, they both said they couldn't come. Helpless, I spent money to hire a caregiver. However, during my recovery, I found out through my grandchildren that my eldest son had taken his family to the seaside for a vacation, and the younger son had gone hiking. Knowing all this made me feel more heartbroken than physical pain. After experiencing such things, Mr. Burney reflects, people ask if we still need to give our savings to our sons. That's why my wife and I gradually let go of our sons, no longer relying on them, and no longer pinning our hopes for retirement on them, because we are still alive and able to take care of ourselves. If they treat us so heartlessly now, it would be worse if we couldn't take care of ourselves in the future. Therefore, we decided to firmly hold on to our money, not giving our sons a penny. Even in emergencies, we will reserve enough retirement funds for ourselves. If we can't take care of ourselves in old age, we won't rely on our sons, but will go to a nursing home together. Although a nursing home lacks the warmth of family and personalized care, I believe that buying services with money will be more comfortable and enjoyable than relying on our sons. Perhaps Mr. Burney's situation is rare, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In today's society, human emotions are as thin as paper, and familial affection is not what it used to be. Especially now, young people pursue freedom and self-enjoyment, and it's rare to find someone completely filial to their parents. So when we grow old, we must hold on to our retirement savings tightly. If children are in trouble, we should help, but not too much. Everyone must experience the ups and downs of life, and children should face their own trials. What we can do is help them within our means when they are in trouble. Many elderly people think about helping their children raise their grandchildren after retirement, but nowadays, many young people prefer to raise their children themselves and are unwilling to let their parents take care of them. If they don't have grandchildren to take care of, retirement life can be boring. If there's enough pension, life might be manageable, but without it, people can become anxious about earning more money. Many people are still young at 60 and can work for another 5 or 6 years. So what kind of work can they do after retirement? Today, I'll share with you 4 types of jobs that retirees can still engage in. 1. The first type is community security. Many community security guards are retired elderly people. If you're retired and in good health, you can apply to be a community security guard. In the community where I live, several security guards are retired seniors. They sit in the security booth every day, reading newspapers and helping press a button to open the gate when someone comes by. The work is relatively leisurely. When looking for security work, try not to aim for high-end communities, as they may have strict management and may not hire retired seniors. It's better to look for opportunities in medium to low-end communities. However, security work usually involves night shifts. My uncle became a security guard after retirement and had to work night shifts, which can be tiring. Be mentally prepared for this. To find security work, it's best to have someone you know introduce you. If you don't have connections, inquire at the community property management office. 2. The second type is being a nanny. Mrs. Carlin, 52 years old, retired 2 years ago with a monthly pension of over $1,500. Her husband passed away many years ago, and her only daughter is still studying for her master's degree. Since Mrs. Carolyn's parents are healthy, she felt unfulfilled doing odd jobs like working at a supermarket or watching over stores. She decided to explore other options. One day, she was sitting on a bench downstairs, lost in thought, when she chatted with an old acquaintance who mentioned his inconvenience due to his current situation. He could still take care of himself, but his only daughter was married and had children elsewhere, and he didn't want to trouble her. He considered hiring a live-in nanny but thought it unnecessary, instead looking for someone to cook and clean weekly. Mrs. Carolyn realized there might be many elderly people like him in their community and decided to become a new type of nanny, not living in but offering assistance as needed. She posted messages in her community group offering her services to cook for the elderly or help young people who needed assistance. To her surprise, she received inquiries from 3 elderly people's children that night. She started by cooking meals according to their preferences and delivering them. Eventually, she expanded her services to include cleaning and accompanying them to medical appointments. After more than a month, Mrs. Carroll noticed a growing demand for such services among the elderly, who often felt neglected by their families. They didn't just need material support, but also desired companionship and understanding. Her interactions with the elderly taught her the importance of empathy and communication. She realized many elderly people wanted someone to listen to them and appreciate their stories. Over time, she provided practical assistance and emotional support, enriching her own life. After 6 months, she invited former colleagues to join her, forming a small team to provide similar services, creating a supportive environment for both the elderly and themselves. 3. The third type is setting up a small stall to sell goods. If you have some savings, you can buy a small cart and set up a stall at the entrance of supermarkets or malls to sell fruits or snacks. This is a form of self-employment, albeit with some financial risk. It's not advisable for retirees with limited funds, as failure is possible. However, for those who enjoy independence and have spare cash, it could be worth a try. If you have a garden and grow your own vegetables, you can sell your produce at the stall. 4. The fourth type is working as a dishwasher in a restaurant. After retirement, women may not be able to work as security guards like men, but they can consider dishwashing in restaurants. My aunt found a dishwashing job after retirement, working at a restaurant during lunch and dinner hours with the rest of the day free for rest. However, the pay may not be high. Similar jobs include hotel cleaning staff positions. After retirement, if you need extra income, it's possible to find work. Having money provides a sense of security, and being financially independent is important for retirees. However, it's crucial to find low-intensity work to avoid overexertion, which could lead to health issues. Retirement should focus on enjoying life, with earning money as a secondary consideration. Even if you don't have much money, living a simple life and saving can still sustain you. Lastly, I wish all retired friends a happy and fulfilling retirement. Remember, you're never alone in this community.
If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.